My own son and daughter tricked me into signing over my life's work, then left me for broke while they lived like royalty on my dime. My name is Thomas Miller, and I'm 58 years old. For 30 years, I was the king of a construction empire I built from the mud up with my own two hands. This story, though, isn't about the building. It's about the demolition. A demolition of my trust, my legacy, and nearly my spirit. What happened at the 30th anniversary party for my own company, a night that was supposed to be my crowning achievement, was actually my public execution, orchestrated by my own flesh and blood. But before I take you into that glittering ballroom of betrayal, do me a favor and let me know where you're watching from in the comments below, and go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you've ever poured your soul into something, built it with sweat and sacrifice, only to have the people you love most try to hijack it, then you need to stick around. You need to understand why what I did next wasn't just revenge, it was a goddamn restoration project. To understand how my son, Alex, and my daughter, Sarah, could gut me like a fish, you have to understand the family I thought we were. You have to understand my late wife, Helen. She was my North Star. We met in community college, two kids with more ambition than money. I was studying drafting, she was studying accounting. We started Miller Construction out of the back of a beat-up Ford pickup with a couple of hammers, a saw, and a loan from her father that we paid back in 6 months. She was the brains, the numbers guru, the one who could spot a phony from a mile away. I was the brawn, the hands-on guy, the one who could read a blueprint like it was a love letter. You see the best in everyone, Tom, she used to tell me, her hand on my arm as I'd rave about some new, slick subcontractor. It's a beautiful quality, but it's going to get you burned one day. My job is to be your fire extinguisher. For 30 years, she was. We were a team. We built custom homes, then small subdivisions, then massive commercial projects. We survived recessions, crooked inspectors, and cutthroat competitors. Our bond was forged in concrete and rebar. Our kids grew up on job sites. Alex, my son, was born with a silver tongue. He was smart, handsome, charming, the kind of kid who could talk his way out of any trouble. I saw his ambition as a reflection of my own. I was so damn proud of him. I paid for him to get an MBA from a top-tier school, thinking he'd come back and be the future of the company. Helen was more cautious. "He's got your drive, Tom," she'd said once, watching a college-aged Alex argue circles around one of my foremen. "But he doesn't have your heart. He sees the company as a machine for making money. You see it as a family." As always, I brushed it off. "He's young," I'd said. "He'll learn." My daughter, Sarah, was 4 years younger. She was quieter, more artistic, always living in her brother's charismatic shadow. She adored Alex, echoing his opinions, seeking his approval. She married a nice but unambitious guy, became a stay-at-home mom, and settled into a comfortable suburban life. She wasn't a shark like Alex, but her loyalty to him over me would become a weapon in his hands. 5 years ago, my world ended. Helen lost a brutal 2-year battle with cancer. Holding her hand as she took her last breath, I felt the foundation of my life crack and crumble. The company, the houses, the money, it all meant nothing without her. I was adrift in a sea of grief, and that's when the sharks began to circle. In my haze of sorrow, Alex stepped up. "Don't worry about a thing, Dad," he said, taking over the financials, meeting with bankers. "I'll handle it. You just take time to heal." Sarah would call every day, her voice dripping with sympathy. "We're so worried about you, Dad. Just let Alex take the burden. It's what Mom would have wanted." It felt like love. It felt like my children were finally stepping up, being the strong support system I needed. I was so blinded by my own pain and so desperate for their affection that I couldn't see the net they were weaving around me. I let Alex take control of more and more at the office. He brought in his own people, sharp-dressed MBA types who spoke in a language of synergies and leveraging assets that I didn't understand. My old-timers, the guys who had been with me since the pickup truck days, started getting pushed to the side. "They're dinosaurs, Dad," Alex would explain patiently. "This is a new era. We need to be lean and aggressive." The final nail in my coffin was hammered in on a gray Tuesday afternoon. Alex came into my office, the one Helen had decorated with warm oak and photos of our proudest projects, followed by 2 lawyers in suits that cost more than my first car. They smelled of money and condescension. "Dad, we need to talk about the future," Alex said, all seriousness and concern. He spread a mountain of paperwork across my desk. "This is a Miller Family Legacy Trust. It's a standard estate planning tool. We move all the company assets, your stock, your personal investments, everything into this trust. It protects it all from estate taxes, from lawsuits. It's the smart modern way to secure your legacy." I looked at the pages of dense, legal jargon. It was gibberish to me. "So what does this mean, exactly?" I asked. "Do I lose control?" Alex laughed, a smooth, reassuring sound. "Of course not, Dad. You're still the chairman, the founder, the boss. This doesn't change anything day to day. I'll just be the trustee, managing the administrative side. Think of me as the goalie, protecting the net. You're still the star player, scoring the goals." It was the perfect metaphor to soothe my ego. He knew exactly which buttons to push. I looked at him, my son, so confident and capable, and I thought of Helen. Let him help Tom. You can't do it all alone. I picked up the heavy, expensive pen they offered me, and I signed. I signed away my life's work. I signed away my freedom. I signed my own death warrant. For the first year, Alex was true to his word. On the surface, nothing changed. I still came to the office, still walked job sites. But there were subtle shifts. Decisions were being made without my input. Alex hired a new marketing firm and started a massive, expensive rebranding campaign. He leased a fleet of black, luxury SUVs as company cars. "Image, Dad," he'd say. "We have to project success." He started firing my guys. My oldest site superintendent, a man named Big Mike who had been my right hand for 25 years, was offered an early retirement package. He was replaced by some kid fresh out of business school who had never poured a yard of concrete in his life. When I confronted Alex, he was masterful. "Dad, I know you're loyal to Mike, and I respect that. But his methods are outdated. He's resistant to the new project management software. He's slowing us down. This was a business decision, not a personal one. You have to separate the two." He made me feel old. He made me feel like I was the one who was out of touch. Then came the invitation. A thick, cream-colored card with gold-embossed lettering. "The board of directors cordially invites you to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Miller Construction. A gala evening honoring our founder, Thomas Miller, and unveiling our vision for the future." "It's all for you, Dad," Alex had said, handing me the invitation with a proud smile. "A night to celebrate everything you've built." Sarah called me, ecstatic. "It's going to be amazing, Dad. You deserve this so much." I was a fool. I was a proud, stupid fool. I bought a new tuxedo. I prepared a small speech, thanking Helen, my crew, my family. I walked into that grand downtown ballroom with a lump in my throat, ready for what I thought would be the proudest night of my life. The place was unrecognizable. It wasn't my company's party. It was Alex's. The room was filled with his people, slick bankers, city politicians, real estate socialites. My guys, the handful of old-timers who were still left, were huddled by the bar in the back, looking uncomfortable and out of place in their rented tuxes. I went over to them, to my real family, but Alex quickly intercepted me. "Dad, come on, you need to mingle. The mayor is here." The whole evening felt like a performance. I was paraded around, introduced as the legendary founder, smiled at, and then promptly ignored as people turned their attention back to Alex. He was the sun, and everyone else was a planet orbiting him. The lights dimmed for the main event. A slickly produced video played on massive screens, showing a highlight reel of my company's history. There were pictures of me and Helen in the early days, covered in sawdust and smiling. It was emotional. It was designed to be. It was the setup. Then Alex walked onto the stage, bathed in a single dramatic spotlight. He was born for this. He owned that stage. 30 years ago, he began, his voice resonating through the ballroom. "My father, Thomas Miller, started this company with a hammer and a dream." He gave a nod in my direction, and a polite smattering of applause followed. He built a foundation of hard work, integrity, and old-school values. And for that, we honor him tonight." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "But a foundation is just that," he continued, his tone shifting, becoming more forceful, more electric. "It is something to be built upon. The world has changed. The old ways, while admirable, are not enough to compete in the global marketplace of the 21st century. To survive, we must evolve. To thrive, we must be bold. That is why tonight, I am so incredibly proud to announce a new chapter, a new identity, a new future." Behind him on the screen, the familiar Miller Construction logo dissolved in a flash of digital fire, and a new one emerged, a sharp, aggressive-looking A with the word Apex beneath it. Apex Holdings. "We are no longer just a construction company," Alex boomed. "We are Apex Holdings, a visionary development group focused on luxury properties, international acquisitions, and cutting-edge design. We are reaching for the apex. And we will not be held back by the past." The room exploded in applause. It was deafening. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My name. My wife's name. Gone. Erased. Replaced by a soulless, corporate brand. Alex went on, thanking my incredible team, announcing a new board of directors that didn't include me, and unveiling an artist's rendering of a glittering glass and steel skyscraper. The Apex Tower. Our new global headquarters. I looked at the stage. Sarah had joined him, her arm linked through his, a triumphant smile on her face. She was beaming with pride. For him. Not for me. In that instant, 30 years of love, trust, and family loyalty turned to ash in my mouth. This wasn't a celebration. It was a coronation. And I was the old king being led to the gallows. I stood up. My legs felt like lead. I turned my back on the stage, on the applause, on my children. I walked through the cavernous ballroom, every head turning to watch me. I didn't care. The walk through the lobby, past the smiling valets, and out into the cold, indifferent city night felt like it took a year. I got in my car and just drove. I had no destination. My phone began to buzz relentlessly. Alex. Sarah. Alex. Sarah. I threw it on the passenger seat and let it scream. The next morning, I woke up in my empty house with the sick realization of what had happened. It wasn't just a public humiliation. It was a final move in a long chess game I hadn't even known I was playing. I went online to my bank, intending to move my personal savings, my go-to-hell money, into a new account at a different bank. A small act of defiance. A red box popped up on the screen. Access denied. Please contact your trustee for assistance. ***, my blood ran cold. I tried again. Same result. I called the bank's private client line, a number I'd known for 20 years. A polite young woman's voice came on the line. "I'm sorry, Mr. Miller," she said after a long pause. "But all assets of the Thomas Miller portfolio are held within the Miller Family Legacy Trust. According to our records, all transactions must be authorized by the sole trustee, Mr. Alex Miller. Shall I try to connect you with his office?" I hung up the phone. He had everything. He had it all. The company, the stock, my investments, my savings, even the deed to my house. I was a prisoner in my own life. I, Thomas Miller, the man who built an empire, was now living on an allowance, subject to the approval of the son who had just stabbed me in the back. The sheer, diabolical brilliance of it was breathtaking. He hadn't just stolen my company. He had stolen my entire life. And he had used my own signature to do it. For a week, I was a ghost in my own life. I didn't leave the house. I didn't answer the door. The buzzing of my phone was a constant, mocking reminder of my powerlessness. The messages from Alex and Sarah were a nauseating mix of feigned concern and outright gaslighting. "Dad, where are you? We were so worried when you left the party. You overreacted." Sarah. "Dad, you need to call me. This silent treatment is childish. I was honoring you. You just don't understand modern business." Alex. They truly believed their own bullshit. They thought I was a confused old man having a temper tantrum, not a king who had just been deposed. The rage that simmered inside me was so immense, so profound, it felt like it could turn my bones to glass. But rage without power is just noise. And I had no power. One night, unable to sleep, I found myself in my home office, surrounded by the ghosts of my past success. Trophies, plaques, framed photos of ribbon cuttings. They felt like relics from another man's life. My eyes fell on a dusty, framed napkin hanging on the wall. It was the first thing Helen and I had ever framed. Our original partnership agreement, scribbled on a napkin from a diner 30 years ago, when Miller Construction was just a crazy dream. Beneath our signatures, I saw the scrawled half-joking clause we had added after a couple of beers. Something about protecting ourselves if one of us ever got a wild hair and decided to sell out. My heart started to beat a little faster. I took the frame off the wall, carefully removed the back, and held the laminated napkin in my hands. The ink was faded, but the words were clear. And then I did something I hadn't done in 20 years. I looked up the number for Frank Rizzo. Frank and I had started this company together. We were young, hungry, and inseparable. But 10 years in, we had a massive falling out. I wanted to take on debt, to expand faster, to chase bigger projects. Frank was cautious. He thought I was getting reckless. "It's that kid of yours, Tom," he'd said, referring to a then-teenaged Alex. "He's filling your head with get-rich-quick fantasies. We build things that last, not gamble." The argument ended with me buying him out. It was bitter. We hadn't spoken since. He went on to run a small, successful contracting business on his own terms, while I built the empire he never wanted. He was the last person on earth I ever thought I'd call for help. When he answered the phone, his voice was gruff, surprised. "Miller? What the hell do you want?" I swallowed my pride. It tasted like ash. I told him everything. The trust. The party. The public humiliation. The theft. The new name, Apex Holdings. When I finished, there was a long, dead silence on the line. I expected him to laugh, to say, "I told you so, you arrogant son of a bitch." Instead, he said, "Apex Holdings, huh? That's what the little prick called it." There was a strange note in his voice, a kind of dark amusement. "Yeah. Why?" "Tom," he said, and I could almost hear the grin spreading across his face. "You might be a world-class idiot, but your timing is impeccable. Find that old napkin we signed. The original partnership agreement. And meet me tomorrow at the diner where we signed it. My treat." I walked into that old-school diner the next day feeling a flicker of something I hadn't felt in weeks: hope. Frank was sitting in a booth, looking older, grayer, but with the same sharp, intelligent eyes I remembered. He hadn't changed a bit. I slid the laminated napkin across the table. He looked at it, then looked at me. "Do you remember what this says?" he asked, tapping a finger on the bottom clause. I read the faded ink aloud. "In the event of a fundamental change to the company's name or core business without the unanimous, written consent of all original founding partners, the exiting partner retains the right to repurchase their original equity stake at the initial valuation price." It was our poison pill. A piece of drunken, youthful bravado meant to keep us honest. "When you bought me out for 500 grand, Tom, we dissolved our partnership, but we never legally voided this original agreement," Frank explained, his voice low and conspiratorial. "Your slick lawyers at the time probably thought it was a joke, not worth the paperwork. And your son, the MBA genius, just fundamentally changed the company's name and its core business. Publicly. And he did it without your written consent, which means he sure as hell didn't get mine." He leaned forward, his eyes glinting like steel. "He just triggered the clause, Tom. He just gave me the right to buy back my 40% of your company." "For how much?" I whispered, my mind struggling to keep up. "What was our initial valuation?" he asked, a slow smile spreading across his face. "When we first incorporated?" The number came back to me from the depths of my memory. $125,000. "So my 40% stake," Frank said, savoring the words, "is worth $50,000. 50 grand. For 40% of a company your son has just pumped full of assets and taken on hundreds of millions in debt against. He thinks he's sitting on a gold mine. What he's really sitting on is a landmine. And we just found the detonator." For the first time in 5 years, I felt the ghost of Helen smiling. This was the kind of beautiful, brutal justice she would have appreciated. "So what's the plan?" I asked, feeling the fire return to my belly. "The plan is a masterpiece of patience," Frank said. "We let him build his tower. We let him borrow, spend, and commit. We let him get in so deep he can't see the sky. You, my friend, are going to play the part of the broken old man. You take his allowance. You sell the big house. You move into a sad little condo. You let him and your daughter think they've won. You make them feel secure. And then, when he's standing on the top floor of his glass palace, ready to cut the ribbon, we're going to pull the foundation right out from under him." For the next 6 months, I became the best actor of my life. I played the part of the defeated patriarch. I let Alex's lawyer send me a monthly check for living expenses, an amount that was an insult. I put my house on the market, the home Helen and I had built, and let the real estate agent, one of Alex's cronies, sell it for less than it was worth. I moved into a generic 2-bedroom condo that smelled of fresh paint and failure. My kids lapped it up. Their pity was almost more infuriating than their betrayal. "Dad, I know it's a big adjustment," Sarah would say on her weekly check-in calls. "But it's for the best. Less for you to worry about." Alex was too busy being a titan of industry to call me much. He was on the cover of local business magazines. "The visionary behind Apex," the headlines read. He broke ground on the Apex Tower, a monument to his ego funded by massive bank loans. He was flying high, completely oblivious to the fact that his wings were made of wax and he was flying straight into the sun. Meanwhile, Frank and I were meeting in secret, in his dusty workshop, surrounded by the honest smell of sawdust and machine oil. It felt like the old days. We hired a discreet bulldog of a lawyer. We tracked every loan, every contract, every press release. We built our case, brick by brick. The perfect day arrived exactly 7 months after the gala. Alex had scheduled a topping-out ceremony for the Apex Tower. It was a massive PR event. He had the mayor, his investors, and the media all gathered at the construction site to watch the final steel beam, adorned with a flag and an evergreen tree, be hoisted into place. It was the peak of his triumph. On the morning of the ceremony, as Alex was likely practicing his speech in front of a mirror, a process server walked into his gleaming new office and handed him a single, devastating envelope. It wasn't a lawsuit. It was a formal, legally binding notice of the execution of a contractual right. It informed him that Frank Rizzo was exercising his option, effective immediately, to purchase 40% of Apex Holdings for the sum of $50,000. A certified check was attached. I wasn't there, but our lawyer told me the color drained from Alex's face. His entire world, his empire built on theft and hubris, had just been fractured. He was no longer the sole king. He had a partner. A 40% partner who hated his guts and held a 30-year-old grudge. Frank and I showed up at the topping-out ceremony right as Alex was about to take the podium. He saw us walking through the crowd, 2 ghosts from his father's past. The swagger evaporated. He looked pale, sick. We didn't have to say a word. We just stood there, arms crossed, and watched him. Every journalist, every investor, every politician in that crowd saw his reaction. They saw us. The story was no longer about the triumph of Apex Tower. It was about the mystery of the 2 old men who had just terrified the boy wonder. The controlled demolition began the next day. As a 40% owner, Frank now had the legal right to inspect every single financial record. What he found, and immediately leaked to a friendly journalist at the Wall Street Journal, was a bombshell. He uncovered millions in corporate funds being used to finance Alex's and Sarah's lavish lifestyles, exotic cars, country club memberships, European vacations, all booked as corporate travel or client entertainment. He found that Alex had committed the company to dangerously speculative side projects without board approval. Frank called an emergency board meeting. The new board Alex had appointed consisted of his sycophants, but they were also businessmen. When Frank laid out the undeniable evidence of Alex's fraud and mismanagement, and when they understood that 40% of the company was now controlled by a hostile party, their loyalty to Alex vanished. Frank, with my proxy vote for my remaining shares, called for a vote of no confidence in Alex as CEO. It passed unanimously. My son was fired. Humiliatingly. Publicly. The banks, spooked by the public scandal and the sudden ousting of the CEO, immediately froze Apex's credit lines and began calling in their massive loans. The company, top-heavy with debt and rotten with corruption, imploded. Construction on Apex Tower screeched to a halt. It stood there for months, a half-finished skeleton, a monument to my son's failure. Alex was wiped out. Apex Holdings filed for bankruptcy. And because he had personally guaranteed many of the loans, he was forced into personal bankruptcy as well. The creditors took everything. His fancy condo, his luxury cars, his expensive watches. Sarah wasn't spared. The investigation into the company's finances revealed her complicity in the fraud. She had knowingly accepted and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in illegally diverted funds. To avoid criminal charges, she had to pay it all back. Her husband, horrified, had to sell their home to cover the debt. Their perfect suburban life was shattered. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I had taken back what mattered. From the ashes of Apex Holdings, Frank and I bought back our best assets for pennies on the dollar during the bankruptcy auction. Our old equipment. Our best contracts. We reopened our doors under the original name, Miller and Rizzo Construction. We rehired every single one of the old-timers Alex had fired. Our first new hire was Big Mike, as our general superintendent. The work felt good again. It felt honest. A few months ago, my phone rang. It was Sarah. She was crying, a broken, hiccuping sound. "Dad. I'm so sorry," she choked out. "We were so wrong. I was so stupid. I just always followed Alex. I never thought for myself." "I know, honey," I said, and the anger I had held for so long finally gave way to a deep, weary sadness. "But you're not a kid anymore. You have to own your choices." I agreed to meet her. I didn't offer her money. I offered her something more valuable. I told her I would help her get back on her feet, but only if she and Alex agreed to intensive family therapy. Accountability. That was the price of my re-engagement. Alex has refused, so far. He's working some dead-end job, living in a cheap apartment, consumed by bitterness. He blames me. He blames Frank. He blames everyone but himself. Maybe one day he'll see the truth. Maybe not. My revenge was never about leaving my kids destitute. It was about teaching them a lesson in foundations. You can't build a life or a business on a foundation of lies, greed, and disrespect. Sooner or later, it will all come crashing down. The other day, Frank and I were on a new job site. We were building a public library. Not a monument to ego, but a place for the community. It felt good. It felt right. Frank clapped me on the back, looking at the solid concrete foundation we had just poured. "You know, Tom," he said with a grin. "For a couple of old dinosaurs, we still know how to build something that lasts." I smiled, looking at the fresh concrete, solid and true. "Yeah, Frank," I said. "We sure do." If you're out there and you feel like the world has knocked you down, like the people you trusted have betrayed you, remember this: it's never too late to find your own blueprint. It's never too late to tear down what's rotten and rebuild something strong, something true, something that lasts. Thanks for listening. If this story meant something to you, hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late to start over. And drop a comment below. I read them all. Tell me about a time you had to rebuild. We're all in this together.